Looking good.
Hey there guys, welcome back to FATBOSS TV. Today we're looking at the final boss in the Eternal Palace, Queen Azshara.
Okay. So to start off, we didn't get to test this encounter as much as the others in the instance, and the fight was different each time we did test it, so our footage is pretty limited. But regardless of that little disclaimer, we have a relatively good idea of how this encounter works, and this video should give you some useful information to actually see this boss in the upcoming weeks.
So the boss has 4 phases and 2 missions, and from what we saw, most of them are pretty difficult. The fight mainly revolves around ancient wards. There are 3 of these active at the start of the fight, and their stored power is shown in a new UI element. Throughout the fight...
Wait, is the ancient ward the thing that's holding the Zoth in place? Look at where they're at. Look at where they're at on the minimap. It's called the Last Prison.
Yeah, and one of the phases is called, like, this palace is a prison or something. If you look in the book...
What the fuck? I'm looking right now. Okay, I'm gonna scroll all the way down. Azshara. My palace is a prison.
Yeah.
Azshara turns her full force upon the raid. Players must contend with Azshara while attempting to keep the Titan console under control.
Dude, this is it. We're going to free N'Zoth.
This is a mistake going here.
Yeah, this was the biggest mistake we as players have ever made.
Yeah, this is bad. Okay, alright, we'll keep going.
Various mechanics will cause these wards to lose power. Now, if a single ward is powered down, the raid will start taking pretty heavy ticking damage.
Okay.
And if all wards are powered down, then you'll get a catastrophic failure, completely wiping the raid. Now, the wards can be recharged by having players stand in the middle of them. This does, however, apply a stacking debuff.
That's actually
to the
pretty
player,
fucking cool.
reducing their maximum health by 10% per
I mean, the boss fight area is
now,
awesome.
The amount of players you need per phase to soak changes as the fight progresses,
okay,
eventually requiring pretty much everyone to stand within them to keep their charge. Anyway, with that in mind, let's jump in and start with phase 1.
Oh my god.
In this phase, you'll have to deal with Athenel and Cyranus, rather than Azshara herself.
Okay.
When both of these mini-bosses die, the first intermission will begin. You'll want one tank to pick up each of them. When Painful Memories is cast, you need to make sure that both ads are out of line of sight of each other. To do this, we use the console towards the middle of the room. When Longing is cast, the ads need to remain within line of sight of each other. You have quite a long grace period to adjust these mobs after the cast. It's just important that you do so, as otherwise in both cases they just gain a massive haste and damage increase. They also gain this buff when either one of them dies, so DPS need to make sure they keep an eye on their health and make sure that they die at the same time.
Okay.
Whilst tanking them, you are going to need to move them around a bit, because as you fight them they will drop patches on the ground. These deal light ticking damage and slow players within them. Ideally, you'll want to tank these ads towards the edges of the room just to keep these patches away from the middle. The tank on Athenel will be hit with Cold Blast. This deals moderate damage and applies a debuff.
That's easy.
Once this stacks up to 3, you're frozen in place and will be shattered by a large hitting ice shard.
That's easy.
Healers need to make sure that the tank is top before this happens.
Yeah, easy.
As for the tank on Cyranus, you'll be hit with Serrated Edge. This is a light ticking physical dot which can be dodged or parried. For the raid to watch out for is the Charged Spear. This is cast by Cyranus on a random player, dealing damage to all players en route and exploding once it reaches its target, dealing a burst of damage to that player and then a smaller burst to the raid. You just got to make sure you're not in line with the projectile as it's fired out. Also to be mindful of is the lightning orbs from Athenel. These land randomly in the room and bounce 3 times before finally despawning. Being caught by one of these deals a fair amount of damage, so they're best to be avoided. Athenel also has a chain lightning cast. It doesn't do a hell of a lot of damage, but it can be interrupted, so why not? We just set up a melee rotation to prevent this ever from going through.
Okay.
As for Queen Azshara in this phase, while she cannot be attacked, she will however power down the wards.
Okay.
You can see which ward is being attacked as it will flash red. We decided to top these up initially on the pool, and then just move a small amount of players to whichever ward was being attacked, just to keep it topped up. These wards are also powered down by the overzealous Hulks. This ad will spawn directly in the middle of the room and just make his way to a
Those are the beefy boys.
ward.
We have to watch out for
Once
them.
he's there, he'll cast Ground Pound, which deals light ticking raid-wide damage and will remove power from the ward. This ad can be crowd controlled, however once it's done once, it will then become completely immune. So you'll want DPS to swap to it immediately as it spawns and then just stun it before Ground Pound is cast. Queen Azshara will also beckon players. This causes your character to move uncontrollably towards the middle of the room for around 8 seconds or so.
Okay.
Once you reach the middle, you're put in a bubble that will slowly kill you if it's not destroyed.
Ooh,
by moving right to the edge of the room before this cast begins, you will never reach the middle and therefore you'll never be put in a bubble. And you can also use the patches that the mini-bosses have been spawning, as they will slow you as you walk across them.
Can somebody invite me to a realm with this rare
phase is the Arcane Orbs. These spawn on a timer typically around the middle of the room.
Okay.
These need to be soaked and completely removed, which takes around 5 seconds. If you don't do this fast enough, they'll eventually explode, dealing massive raid-wide damage. While soaking them, you will take moderate ticking damage, so healers you need to be ready to keep the soaking players topped. Once you've got the hang of all of that,
and the boss isn't even out yet,
you'll get into the first intermission.
What the fuck is this?
Orbs will spawn around the middle of the room. Shortly afterwards, everyone in the raid will be given a decree that they must perform. Failing to perform it will apply a stacking dot, which will eventually become unhealable. Suffer demands that you soak an orb, and obey forbids you to soak an orb.
Okay.
Stand together asks that you stand with at least one
Wait, so
other
they have an
player,
add-on?
and stand alone asks you to keep away from other players entirely. Stay asks you to stand still, and march asks you to keep moving around. Now, on normal mode, you'll only have to perform one of these. You only get one decree put on you.
Okay, good.
Heroic, you can have up to 2, and on Mythic, you can have up to 3. For the most parts, these are pretty easy to deal with by yourself. The issue is that the entire raid gets them, which can become rough in situations such as needing to soak an orb all by yourself or soaking an orb as a group, as the group players are going to be running towards the solo players, hoping that they've got the exact same thing.
This is so
There are a
dumb,
few
man.
animations that do make this a little bit clearer. Solo guys have lightning surrounding them, and group players have arcane around them. We even made this easier with a Weaker that was shouted either solo or hug.
That's
Shortly
easy
after
then.
The orbs have been soaked, phase 2 will begin.
Wait, that's easy.
As the phase starts, the middle ward, which has been inactive up to this point, will become empowered by the boss.
Oh, there's
The
Azshara.
higher energy this has, the more damage the boss will deal, which is bad since the boss is dealing damage randomly to players throughout the phase.
Okay.
So you've got to keep the power of the ward to a minimum.
It's 150 million health.
Soaking it up. And on top of this, the location of this empowered ward will swap with others.
Jesus Christ, man.
During this phase, indomitable adds will spawn around the edges of the room and move towards the empowered ward.
Okay.
If they reach it, they'll give it a pretty high amount of energy. All DPS need to be ready to swap to these adds and kill them before they reach it.
Okay.
As for Azshara herself, you want to tank her not too far from where you had the mini-bosses from phase 1.
Can somebody invite me to a realm with this rare up?
Beacon, but it's been slightly
Over
changed
here.
from phase 1, as it
Crack
now
one,
forces
count
people
Kel'Thuzad.
to move towards her rather than in the middle of the room.
Okay.
If you do reach the new destination, instead of becoming encased in a bubble, you will now become mind-controlled and gain a large damage shield. People need to damage through that shield to free you from the mind control.
Oh my god.
Now this generally only targets ranged players, but still by having her near the old patches of goo from phase 1, it does make it so people are way less likely to reach her because they're going to be slowed by those patches. Now whatever ward the boss is closest to in this phase, she will slowly drain energy from it, and if she's closest to her empowered ward, she will slowly give that one energy. We opted to keep her near 1 most of the time, and we just rotated the raid to stand within it and keep it topped up, never going above 5 stacks or so.
Of course.
Now whilst tanking her, you will be hit by Arcane Jolt, which deals a small amount of arcane damage, but applies a debuff that increases the damage you take from all arcane sources by 5%.
This is insane.
Seconds. Now this stacks up pretty fast, so you'll want tanks to swap as frequently as they can to keep these stacks to a minimum. As for the raid, she'll debuff random players with Arcane Burst. This debuff just explodes at the end of its duration, dealing massive damage to all players within line of sight of that player.
Oh, that's easy. You just walk away.
Hit by the explosion,
yeah, that was like in Mechatork.
Arcane Burst, she'll apply even more.
Yeah, it's the exact same mechanic.
So
that's a joke.
Joke
mechanic,
guys.
guys.
Will need to run behind the pillars or use the console to create a line of sight and let their debuff expire. This, however, becomes a bit of an issue if you have more than 2 debuffs, as you can run out of safe places to line of sight.
I'm gonna be honest, guys. About 5 minutes ago, I lost track. Like, this is...
Alright.
Okay.
Tomorrow's not happening.
Okay, so
sure
what happens in phase 1? Do you remember anything in phase 1?
Alright, so in phase 1, a bunch of ads come out.
Yeah.
And you've got to DPS the ads while both staying away and stacking on your teammates.
Because the
taking debuffs. Out of the you take the debuffs out of the raid, and then it drops the purple, and then more ads will go to the center, and then you have to kill those ads, and then they empower the lock or some shit. And then after that, then you get the intermission or something. And then you kill more ads, and then...
Wait, has there been an intermission?
I don't know, dude.
Oh, is that between the ads and her? Holy shit, man.
Fortunately, this debuff can be dispelled, so what we decided to do was just have one of the debuff players move behind a pillar immediately with a healer and be dispelled, whilst the other two timed out naturally themselves not too long afterwards, one behind each pillar. Now the raid will also have to line of sight behind the pillar or the console when Arcane Detonation is cast. This cast just deals a massive amount of raid-wide damage to anyone within line of sight of the boss. By having the boss position not too far from either of the pillars or the console was pretty much key here, as it gives enough time for everyone in the raid to move behind before the cast finishes. Now once you got the hang of doing all that a few times, and the raiders got used to the idea of keeping the empowered wards low and the normal ones topped up, and the boss reaches 70% health, the second intermission will begin. This worked the same as the first whilst we were testing, but it appears that the March Decree has been moved to this intermission only in the Dungeon Journal. Aside from that, it should pretty much be the same. Execute your decrees without gaining a shitload of stacks, and not long after the orbs have been soaked, Phase 3 will begin.
Now this phase plays out mechanically the same as Phase 2, however there are a few new things to deal with. 3 new adds will spawn from the very start. 2 Tide Mistresses will stand on top of one of the ancient wards each and begin to drain its power. This cast does appear to be interruptible. It also appears that maybe these adds can spawn on top of the empowered ones, which will give the empowered one even more energy.
This isn't even mythic.
That you can interrupt this. These mistresses will also cast Static Shock on random players, which makes them just deal pulsing AoE damage around them, and they will also cast Chain Lightning, which can be interrupted. Most importantly, the mistresses will shield themselves, making them completely immune to damage and interrupts. The shield is broken by using the other new add, the Loyal Myrmidon. This guy will cast Charge Spear on a random player. This works the exact same way as the one cast by Serranos. Except if the player that is targeted stands on top of the mistress, it will break the shield on her, allowing people to continue to interrupt and damage them. The only other difference in this phase is that instead of the boss moving the empowered ward around the room, she'll instead replace multiple ancient wards with empowered ones. We're not sure exactly how this works as we never saw it, but by having multiple empowered ones up, it means the boss is going to be doing significantly more damage and means even more soaking for the raid to do. And whilst you are doing that, you'll want to be focusing all of your damage into the mistress, and once she's dead, the Myrmidon before returning back to Azshara.
Holy
and when
shit,
either the adds
man.
are dead, or when the boss reaches some unknown health percentage,
Holy
phase
fucking
4
shit, dude.
She'll still have Beacon in this phase and will slowly power down the nearest ancient ward as well as having multiple empowered wards. Aside from that, everything is new. Tanks have to deal with Void Touch, which is a new debuff which reduces the incoming healing you receive. The raid have to deal with a beam. We're guessing this is probably a frontal cone targeted at a random player. You also have to watch out for rifts that spawn. Players within these rifts will just take ticking damage. We're going to guess that these slowly fill up the room. But what's most interesting in this phase is the console. At certain points you'll overload it, applying so many stacks of a debuff to the console that when expire, deal a burst of damage to the raid and also a random effect.
What
each.
is this, man?
If they all expire at the exact same time, then you're probably just going to wipe. So you need one player to interact with the console and release the energy over time. Now, one of 4 random effects will happen when you do release any of the energy. One is just that it will flat out do additional damage. Secondly, a random DPS is given a 40-second debuff, which increases their damage, but instantly kills them when it expires. 3 is a really nasty dot that is probably only applied to a single player, but potentially
this is gonna
be is that one of the ancient
Eternal
wards in the room
Pal
will
is
just
more like Eternal Mechanics.
And that's
it's going to be an eternal
so
stream.
Like it's just going to be entirely about space
This
management
is ridiculous.
and just min-maxing the console charges, trying to get rid of them all before they all just go off simultaneously. But what do we think?
It was a shame it was as hard as it was while we were testing.
Yeah.
We really didn't get to see everything, and things were pretty broken, like the arcane orbs just instantly one-shotting people, and the game crashing if any of the Phase 2 ads reached the middle of the room and all that kind of stuff. So it was a little bit buggy. But some of the Phase 4 mechanics do sound very interesting, mainly the Titan console.
What is this, man? Like, how do you...
And just dealing with the random things that happen each time you use it. It's going to be, you know, you might be able to burst through 3 of them, and then you need to stop for a long time whilst healers catch back up.
This boss has more mechanics than, like, every boss in ICC combined.
So insane. It makes your spell cast instant. Gives you extra resource generation. It gives you melee and ranged attack speed haste as well. Whoever gets that is just going to be insane. Like, imagine a Boomkin with Incarn up. 40 seconds. You're just going to do so much damage. It's going to be crazy.
Yeah, it's interesting because at the same time as well, is it possible that every single time that happens?
Somebody says this is what happens whenever enough players complain about easy raid fights. Yeah, you've got these people that have never done the raids that are saying they're easy. They're like, wow, Mythic's easy. Method did it in 2 weeks. How could it be hard? Method did it in 2 weeks. What do you mean? It's a joke. And like, they never done the boss fights. They think the bosses are really, really easy. And then there are actually people at the top end that have relationships with people at Blizzard that are like, oh yeah, this is great. This is what we need. Because you need a book. You need a fucking book. I don't have a book around here. You need a book in order to learn one boss. It's like the Dungeon Journal. It's not even a lie. This is crazy. What class are you playing? Classic? I don't know.
If you have the God Pull, because it is completely random effects, right?
Yeah.
Could you just get that every single time so the entire raid gets a fucking buff and you just plow the boss and that's it, it's over? Is that what World First is going to be? Probably not,
actually,
right?
It'll probably be more like, maybe like you have 20 charges and 4 of those charges are guaranteed to be the damage
Holy
buff. 4
shit,
of them are
man.
Be a bad dot. So if it's completely random,
and
then,
there's
yeah,
another mythic, there's a mythic only phase too, apparently.
Because it's just going to be
that's what people are saying.
Actually progress that last phase.
As for the mythic version of this fight, it's going to be extremely interesting because there are very little changes in the Dungeon Journal apart from the fact that there's an energy wall down the middle of the room, or at least it sounds like it's down the middle of the room, that you cannot cross because otherwise you just get instantly one-shot, which means you're going to have the entire raid spread the entire time. There's so many questions on like which wards are going to be empowered and which ones aren't, because potentially you could just get RNG fucked.
Potentially, yeah, because half the raid might be cut off from a certain area of the room and then you need to go and charge it up.
Or all the people on that one side
I
have
don't
already
even
previously been soaking, but then they have to do it again, but they already have loads of stacks, so they can't.
What do you even say, dude?
Really weird.
Maybe it slowly moves.
And yeah, this isn't even the last raid of the expansion.
The
wall is a Hellion beam. Is that what you're going to do?
Well, because they did no mythic testing, we have no idea how it's going to be. But that has suddenly made me way more enthusiastic about this fight. Because
fuck, man!
Speaking, the whole idea of micromanaging throughout the fight, the whole energy thing, although it's like somewhat interesting, it doesn't really speak to me personally. I don't really enjoy that side of things. At least not.
It's that hard because of DBM. Yeah, the thing is, like the weak auras and DBM and everything, they make it to where players can ignore so many mechanics by not having to think about them because the game because the add-on plays the game for the player, that Blizzard just bloats the bosses with mechanics in order to offset that, so players still have to deal with things and consciously make decisions. And that's the issue. It's like, imagine doing this boss without DBM. I mean, I can't even imagine it.
An irritating side thing that you had to deal with.
I think the main reason why you have that frustration is because you have to go quite far away to go do it, because tanking the boss in the middle of the room isn't really
this is a 15-minute video, and it didn't even talk about half the phases.
Dealing with certain mechanics, especially in
phase 2,
you need to line of sight so much, it just made them difficult. And also, if you are tanking the boss in the middle of the room and you do go and soak, you get lost anyway because of the pillars.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's like, it feels like there's never a good time to go and deal with the wards, so dealing with the wards at any point during the fight just feels a bit shitty. I'm sure there will be like a good strat that eventually comes out and it just works perfectly. The whole fight flows really nicely. At least during testing, that whole mechanic, yeah, I wasn't a massive fan.
And before we end the video, we should probably talk about the intermission as well.
Yeah, it's such a clusterfuck. It's insane how much stuff's going on there.
It's pretty fun, though. It's a nice little callback to Queen's Court, you know, throwing decrees at you again. Obviously, these ones are a little bit more difficult than the ones from Queen's Court.
Yeah.
This is, okay, alright, you know what? This is insane, man. Like,
I can just imagine where you have to stack up, march, and soak at the same time.
One thing's for sure, man. If you see someone in full,
if you see someone in full, some of them you just
mythic
can't do.
Eternal Palace gear, they've got to be a good player, right?
Or they have a lot of add-ons.
That's gonna sound pretty terrible, but
I mean, I guess.